I see the inner critic as a perverted guardian archetype. There's a relationship between shame and the self, and how the critic protects us from vulnerability while simultaneously destroying our capacity for self compassion. This brings me to the wounded healer and self-abandonment. I'm picturing a person who can offer profound comfort to a friend in crisis, who instinctively knows the right words to heal another's pain, but they stand mute and helpless before their own suffering. And I've seen this in practice where they seem to be masters of their compassion for everyone else except themselves. When others stumble, they see human frailty and offer grace. But when they stumble, they see unforgivable failure. This is the paradox I see of the wounded healer archetype, that knows intimately both wounding and healing, but cannot apply their own medicine to their deepest injuries. It's almost like we become skilled at loving others while remaining strangers to self-love. We're experts at forgiving everyone except the person who needs it most, ourselves. There's a profound self-abandonment here, a turning away from our own pain, or what James Hillman calls a betrayal of the soul. We treat ourselves as we would never treat another, creating an internal exile that echoes through every relationship we have. Why do we find it easier to extend compassion to others than to ourselves? What archetypal pattern, if you can speak to that, is playing out here?
It's a really interesting line of inquiry because we do judge others for sure. What it involves for us to be able to be compassionate to others is for us to put ourselves in their shoes. Maybe that's why it's hard to do it for yourself, because you're already in your shoes. You don't have any distance from the immediacy of whatever is going on inside of yourself. But you can do it in the realm of your imagination. You can split the self so you can see a younger self. Sometimes when I was training through the More to Life program, they did do work on the self. Sometimes it was mirror work so that you're externalizing the self so that you can see the self and speak to the self as other, but also a younger self, because your heart might be a little bit more tender to a photograph of yourself age 4, because you know that this little 4-year-old was doing the best that they could with what they had at the time. So that evokes more compassion. There is something to be said for holding ourselves to high standards, not to be detrimental and self-denigrating, but we know when we're not in our integrity. We know when we do things where our ideal version of ourselves wouldn't do. Sometimes you say things and you just think, oh God, that wasn't exactly true on reflection. Or you do something that was a little bit selfish, but your self-image is that you're actually a generous person. There's a bit of a grating, but that's why it's good to be able to do the inner work and to see what is it that we're accusing ourselves of, and to do a verification process. So the work of Byron Katie, do you know her
Yeah.
work? That kind of CBT sort of thing where you're doing an inquiry about those beliefs that you hold about yourself and seeing if they're true. A lot of the time it feels true because you've believed that you're selfish all your life, but it doesn't mean that it is true. And there may well be examples of you having not been selfish and being generous. But back to your question about why do we resist it so much, or why does it feel so dangerous? I think it's because we're messing around with the construction of the self, of who I think I am. Therefore, you're looking at your self-image. It can just be a habitual denigration of the self because that's how you've always thought of yourself, or always had that inner talk towards yourself. You've always been unkind. But it doesn't mean you have to carry on doing it once you recognize it. And that's why doing the work, looking at the shadows, turning towards them, you have to do that. Otherwise, it's all unconscious. And so you've got nothing to say about it. It's running you. Whereas if you actually are looking at the programming and going, oh, that bit of code, I could mend that bit, rather than just it automatically running in the background.